Hi, welcome to another edition of Get to Know Niagara, USA. Today we're actually going to come and visit an attraction that many of you may not be familiar with. It's the Niagara Aerospace Museum. It's located just outside of the Niagara Falls International Airport. You actually can pull your motor coach right up to the front door and come in to explore a wonderful world of history of aerospace. With me today is Walter Gordon, the president of Niagara Aerospace Museum, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what your groups will learn to see and do while they're here.
Most people who visit Niagara Falls, the first thing they say when they see our museum is that I had no idea this was here. And then once they come inside, they say, I had no idea any of this took place in Western New York. There's tremendous aerospace history here, from helicopters to propeller aircraft to jets to rockets. We're actually standing right here in front of a Bell 47 helicopter. This particular model was Larry Bell's, the founder of Bell Aircraft. This was his personal helicopter, one of the best examples of its types in the world, and it's right here in our museum.
And there's some interesting history about who's flown this helicopter, isn't there?
Well, Larry Bell, and there are stories, of course, that he was good friends with Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and often sent his helicopter down to Jamestown to pick them up and fly them up to Buffalo or Niagara Falls.
There's far much more to see, so let's move on and see some of the other things that your group will be able to learn about. Yeah, everyone remembers the movie Apollo 13, and remember the famous quote, "Houston, we have a problem"?
We're looking at the actual ECOM, or Electrical and Environmental Control Console, that was used in the NASA Houston Control Center during all of the actual Apollo missions. So when Jim Lovell called NASA after they had that explosion in the command module on Apollo 13 and said, "Houston, we've had a problem," this is the actual physical console where that problem was diagnosed and they figured out what was wrong so they could bring the crew safely back to Earth. This is an original Bell rocket belt, literally a flying rocket pack that was made by Bell Aerospace in the early 60s and was featured in the James Bond movie Thunderball. If any of you have seen it, Sean Connery is being pursued by some bad guys, runs out onto a balcony high up in the air where he obviously has no chance of escape, straps on a rocket belt just like this, and then flies away, leaving the bad guys behind. And that scene was actually flown by a Bell test pilot who learned to fly it right here in Western New York.
So Walter, what are we looking at here?
This is a production lunar module ascent engine from the Apollo program. For those of you who may not remember how we got to the moon, once the 3 astronauts were in orbit over the moon, the 2-stage lunar module carrying 2 of the astronauts, in the case of Apollo 11, Armstrong and Aldrin, would descend to the surface of the moon, land, the astronauts would get out, collect their rocks, go back inside, button the lunar module up, and then press a button to fire the ascent engine to take them back into orbit. It had to work. Once they were inside, if they pressed that button and this engine didn't fire, they would be stranded on the moon, they would have died, they'd still be stuck there today.
This plane always had an interesting name, the Jenny. Can you tell us a little bit more about its history?
Sure. Well, actually, the name Jenny came about because this is a combination of 2 Curtiss aircraft. He made a Model J and a Model N, both as trainers for pilots at the beginning of World War I. But neither of them were exactly what they wanted, so Glenn Curtiss combined the best of the J, the best of the N into the JN aircraft, and the JN became the Jenny. That was the nickname that pilots gave it. Most Allied pilots in World War I were trained in this aircraft. British, Canadian, US, French, most of them learned to fly in this aircraft, and they were all made in Buffalo and nearby in Canada.
Well, Walter, I have to thank you for just even giving us a little taste of all there is to see and do here.
The special thing about our museum, the Niagara Aerospace Museum, is that it's dedicated to air and space, aviation space accomplishments that took place right here in our own backyard, in Niagara Falls and in Buffalo. You can go to other museums around the country, the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., or the Air Force Museum in Dayton, or even the Naval Museum in Pensacola, Florida, and you can see some of the treasures that we have here in the Niagara Aerospace Museum, but the only place you can go to see all of them and appreciate the history that happened right here at home is here in the Niagara Aerospace Museum. I really encourage you to make a trip and see what it's all about.